We didn't. Sorry. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee, Buses, and Politics on a Sunday evening now. So right in the middle for me of Sunday evening blues. Do you still get that, guys? Do you still get Sunday evening blues, Martin? I do a bit. I love my job, but still.
Yeah, it's because I hate the commute I have on a Monday morning. It's about 20 yards.
I have to drive to Peterborough every day, which is a beautiful city. So yeah. David's back with us. Martin, I think Alex might be coming along in a bit later. As usual, yeah, it's Sunday, so she's out canvassing as usual. Never, ever gives up. So we're going to talk about a few things today. And I think one of the things we talked a lot in depth about local government reorganisation last week. But David, you wanted to make a few points about some stuff that's been happening in Peterborough about adult social care.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a story that came out in from Peterborough, which I thought was a really interesting one. So it's a story that's come out about an unnamed person, and it's right that they're unnamed, who evidently has very significant care needs. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, if they need the care, then they should have the care. No, absolutely. But and it's not for I don't think it's for us to say whether that's right or not. I don't think we, you get where I'm going with it. But it's to illustrate that the sort of pressures that councils are under. So the cost is split between the Peterborough City Council and the Integrated Care Board, and this is something that the person in question has the right to that care. The cost for over 7 years is £11 million. Now, this I don't know any of the details of it apart from what's has been in the press. And evidently this person has a lot of needs, and as I say, it's appropriate they get them. The point I wanted to make was, as I think it illustrates the sort of pressures that councils are under, that this is a statutory obligation. This is something which, by law, the council has to do. I think it should do, but it has to do it by law. The amount of money from central government has decreased. It doesn't, over the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever it happens to be. And I don't think is particularly going up now either, with Labour, it's sort of in charge. But that obligation, those obligations are still there. And it's those obligations for social care which take up an awful lot of cost. And this is, people say, oh, why is my council tax is going up, but I'm getting worse services. The roads are full of potholes. And I think it's hopefully that illustrates it. And it's a particularly difficult case, but I think it shows the problems that councils face, that there are things that they have to do, have no choice about doing, and are priorities, but probably don't get much visibility. And they've got less money for everything else. And that means the everything else suffers. I just thought it was an interesting illustration of the situation.
So Peterborough City Council is interesting, isn't it? Because it's actually a unitary, around here, a rare unitary, but a small one, So in Cambridgeshire proper, Cambridgeshire County Council would currently be responsible for adult social care. And I guess so you mentioned the Integrated Care Board, so people might know what that is, but that's a relatively new invention, which is another, how do we describe it? Another governmental body, local governmental body, which is in charge of healthcare. Well, it doesn't map onto any of the political boundaries at all, though.
Yeah, I just want to say, you say it's new. It's not. The versions of integrated care boards or integrated health boards or whatever they are have existed in different formats for decades and decades. What they do is every few years to try and show a bit of progress and pretend there's been progress, they relabel them and play around with the duties. But they've basically existed for decades in different formats. sorry to push back, Stephen, but
that's fine, because I mean, while I was a county councillor, they seemed relatively new, and as usual, some reorganisation, trying to understand what it is. There's not that much democratic input into them, is there? Because the county council has a seat on them. I wonder how the cost, that 11 million, the cost is split between the integrated care board and the county council, and I'm presuming that the city council's case in this case is funded through council tax, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not, some of it will be coming from government, perhaps as a grant, but it won't cover all of it, and so 11 million quid is a lot of money, and it's difficult to budget for, isn't it?
And I just did a quick Google, and it's on the BBC, so it must be true, about the cost of a placement for a child in care, and this is from Northamptonshire, which is just across the border. So, Northamptonshire's got 2 councils, but it's got an overarching children's trust that looks after children's services. And they're saying that the average cost of a placement for a child in care is now more than £5,000 a week. And for some children, individual plans cost more than £1 million. Now, it's the same again. If they need those care plans, and they need those plans, and I feel like this, especially above everything else about children in care, because I think the way we deal with children in care in this country is a disgrace. I don't think we do anywhere near good enough by them. But once again, it's a pressure that the council, if that care is needed, the council has to provide. And you can bet your bottom dollar, given what Reform have been sort of saying this week, you can bet your bottom dollar that Reform's pathetic Doge committee who have been into West Northamptonshire haven't found anything significant to save.
No, and the question is really, should social care be handled by local authorities, or should it be handled by something akin to the NHS, a social care kind of national or local body that took care of all of these things? Because it's a massive pressure on local government finances, and you can control lots of costs, but you can't control those costs. If you get a few deservedly high need people on your patch, it can have a massive impact on your spending, can't it, or your ability to spend on other things. So
no, it can, and the thing for me about this, and it does make a case, and I'm not saying this is the solution I would choose, but it does make a case for a single unitary across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, because there's a reality at the moment. We've got within Cambridgeshire, we've got 2 bodies looking after social care, effectively the county council, Cambridgeshire County Council, and Peterborough City Council. And you would have thought that, given the financial burden that social care, burden's the wrong word, but the financial strain that care puts on councils, that one of the places you might be able to make savings is on overheads, through management and whatever, by reducing the number of bodies that provide care down to 1. And the only way you're going to do that is by a single council across all of them. Now, I'm not saying that is the final solution, but I do think that it needs to be on the table, and some people need to think about it, just because of that issue about the cost of care, because we are not going to get any significant reform of care between now and the next election. And I'm fearful of where Labour are going to be by the next election, because the report is going to be published, and the Labour Party are not going to be able to do anything about it, because as soon as they start trying to do anything or make change, the other parties, because of our sad political system in this country, are just going to absolutely exploit it.
So a few things there. Actually, quite a lot of things. They do stop me when I get tedious. I do think there is a really good argument, and this is something that isn't being done in the current thing, for integrating, or for matching, if nothing else, matching borders of healthcare with local government. I think there is a really good argument for that. And other there are other things as well. I remember. I mean, this is the sort of electoral and administrative geography of the UK is a nightmare in loads of ways. So doing that would be a big help, I think.
Can I give an example of that locally? So around here, kind of Gamlingay, which is in Cambridgeshire, and some of the villages I used to represent, so Worsley, is they are their GP surgeries are part of NHS trusts, yeah, which are based over the border in Bedford. Yeah, but their education is controlled or organised in Cambridgeshire by Cambridgeshire County Council, and there was all sorts of problem with young people requiring statements and special interventions where we couldn't get the county council to properly talk to Bedfordshire, which is a completely foreign alien. You know, in local politics, those cross-border communications don't happen at all, in my experience, and there's loads of people who missed out.
Are you saying people from Bedfordshire are aliens?
Yeah, some of them. I mean, have you been to Luton? No. We were trying to push maybe as an alternative to the LGR stuff as maybe St Neots going west, so I've ruined that. No, Bedfordshire is perfectly nice, yeah, but it's just, you know, that's already, they're two different unitaries. There's Central Beds and Bedford Borough, but you know, the whole political system, I don't know any of the very few of the councillors there. You don't have any contacts, connections, and just trying to get officers who I'm sure do a great job talking to each other and sorting these things out across these strange arbitrary borders is really difficult. Sorry, David.
Well, I mean, you can go back to Peterborough as well. If you look at the NHS Trust up here, it's Peterborough and Stamford NHS Trust. Yeah, and that says it all.
Yeah, so Northwest Anglia NHS Foundation Trust has Hinchingbrook Hospital, which is in Cambridgeshire, Huntingdonshire and Cambridgeshire, Peterborough City Hospital, which is in Peterborough, and Stamford, which is in Lincolnshire. Yeah, you know the tertiary, you know, a lot of people get referred from Hinchingbrook to Addenbrooks, you know, so on. I just want to show, this is a picture I took actually at a town council building, but just to give you, just at a very local level, some of the complexity.
Well, it saves people looking at me as well, so that's fine.
So I'm going to try to put that on. Hopefully people can see that. That is a map of who is responsible for cutting the grass in Huntingdon. I'm going to try to zoom in on here because you get an hopefully you can see. So this pink bit where my mouse is moving is Conygear Park, which is the town council. You've then got red, which is part of Places for People, I think. You've got blue bits, which are a different part of Places for People. I think it's a different organisation. The yellow bit is Cambridgeshire County Council, but contracted to the town council. And I'm going to move down to my favourite bit here in Hertford, where you've got one strip of grass that has 3 authorities mowing it, which is or responsible for it, which is just mad.
I mean, it is.
Hinchingbrook Park will be HTC as well. So you've got HTC in there as well as another grass cutting.
Yeah, no, all of the green stuff on that map was HTC.
Okay, I see. Go on, Martin.
I would say that is awkward, and local government reorganisation, we should take the opportunity to try and sort some of that rubbish out. But there's a reality, which might be a bit harsh on a few people, but it's true. If there was a will to sort that out, it would have been sorted out by now.
So the town council does the county councils, but not the district councils, which I mean, it almost doesn't matter which organisation does it, but it would seem to make more sense to have one person, one organisation, and it doesn't matter which organisation doing it.
But all these things are a consequence of a rushed LGR in 1974, and you know, 50 years later, 51 years later, we haven't managed to sort some of these things out. Yeah.
Well, I would say, Stephen, sorry, I'm pushing back on you a lot today, so I apologise. But if it's been going on since 1974, there's no excuse for it not having been sorted out.
No, I agree. And like, there's a similar tapestry of lampposts, everywhere. So Neots is exactly as complex as that. You go to the Ian Webb in the ops HQ in St Neots, and you'll see the same pattern. And I always, every time I get a request about a lamp post, I struggle because there's lamp posts we haven't been able to locate. And so yeah, I guess those existing authorities could have sorted out between themselves. It's a good point.
I remember.
They haven't.
Do you remember when we went through the palaver? Must have been about 10 years ago now, where we changed all the street lights over to LED.
Yeah, still going on.
Yeah, and it's still causing some problems now, to be fair. But I remember at that time we offered Fenland District Council the opportunity to get their lamps, all their lamps upgraded at the same time. And because the leader at Fenland didn't like to do anything with County Council at the time, it didn't happen. And I mean, it just, it doesn't, those things don't make sense at all. And that's where local government lets itself down, because there's also money to be saved from those things as well.
Yeah. So going back to integrated care boards, so it's a consideration. It's talked about alongside the LGR stuff, and I've heard people preferring one of the three options for Cambridgeshire because it mapped closest to the ICBs, but it's not a primary consideration and not one we can change, because, like we've already said, the boundaries of the ICBs go outside of the footprint of Cambridgeshire or Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and so that's not something we can fix with this. And like, it would be good if we took the opportunity to do all of these things at once. It would make things work a lot better, I think.
So
go on with David.
So is a couple of things. One is yes, but equally, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Yeah. Now, while there are, this is being done quickly and so on, all the rest of it, I do think that for all the problems and the difficulties it will cause as we do the transfer, I think it will be better. I think it is worth doing, even if we don't get a suboptimal outcome. It'll be better than what we've got. The other thing I wanted to ask was on the boundaries, because we've got these options of the ones that are being looked at, A, B, C, and D. I wonder if a good option would be one called the City of Peterborough as a unitary, and another one called Cambridgeshire, where effectively what you do is get rid of the districts and have, it's bigger than the government says it wants, but have a unitary which is Cambridgeshire.
I think so. So we're talking about three options now. Yeah, there are originally 6 options. One of those options, and this is me talking from memory, was that a slightly bigger Peterborough, which expanded its boundaries into places like Yaxley and parts of Fenland. Like Wiltsea is another example, I think. So it was kind of a slightly bigger Peterborough, and basically what you're describing. But that was, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was more complex than that, just as a caveat. But I think that was one of the ones that's rejected on economic grounds, because the Peterborough bit, even with bigger boundaries, would be undersized. And so that decision's already been taken, I think. Hello, Alex.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I got stuck on the doorstep for a long time. But I was actually discussing local government reforms.
Maybe we can come on to that next, and you can give us the view from the doorstep on LGR, and we can also talk about the fact that everybody's going to have their chance to give their opinions, because there's a public engagement. It's not a consultation; it's a survey on local government, which we can talk about in a minute too.
I'm increasingly minded to think about that sort of solution. To that sort of solution of a greater Peterborough and a Cambridgeshire is the one that makes sense for me. I know Whittlesea would end up being part of Peterborough within it, but I think that's an inevitability. And we do look to Peterborough for most of our services. But you could then have a proper debate about places like Chatteris as an example, which is nice, easy access, relatively easy access into Cambridge. So I'm increasingly minded of it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
And I think, as a Southern Huntingdonshire councillor for St Neots, but I think maybe St Neots and Ives, Huntingdon, Gone Manchester would also probably be, given that we'd end up being part of Greater Cambridgeshire rather than Greater Peterborough, would
Peterboroughshire.
probably support that. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be the Greater Soak of Peterborough?
Yes,
Isn't that the old name for it? The Soak of
Yeah,
Peterborough?
Soak of Peterborough. Yes, it would be.
May well have been. Yeah. It'd be nice to give it an evening, but give it a an old name as well. Yeah.
So one of the most the person who's taught me most about the history of Cambridgeshire local government is Anthony, and I spent a very, very delightful day with him in a library in Cambridge with some other people where Anthony took us through the whole history of Cambridgeshire politics and all the actual reorganisations, the proposed reorganisations, and you can see, like, I was always confused about my county council division. It looks like a big C with a bit missing out of it. I always assumed that was gerrymandering, but like it'd been there since the start, since somebody drew a map many years ago, and like for all different iterations, much before 1974. So put that back on screen, because if you've got,
I'll bring. If you give me a minute, I'll bring the link up.
Yeah. Because Anthony's stuff is always really, really interesting, and actually seeing how these things evolved and understanding what the green belt around Cambridge actually is was a illuminating moment for me.
So the interesting thing is on Redcliffe Moor is actually, I think it would work quite well now. I think having something like Redcliffe Moor, where you have the thing with Redcliffe Moor is I think you'd have had regional things as well.
We're increasingly, with bringing in health services and everything into it as well. We're increasingly making the case, actually, for regional government as well. And I would much prefer that as an alternative to the House of Lords. Is a reality. Yeah.
So I mean, to be honest, so would that be something like Germany, where the Bundesrat is
Very, very much so, and it makes a lot of sense. And in Germany, bearing in mind they also have mayors, and basically the role of councillors in a lot of those authorities is basically to hold the mayor to account. Which is increasingly sort of where we're going with the combined authority mayor.
I mean, and it's interesting that a mayor in Germany has far more power. But the mayor, so I know from the one of our twin towns, Wertheim, it would be like the mayor of Huntingdon being an executive role where you're directly elected for a few years, but it's not just Huntingdon, it's Huntingdon and places near it. So it would be, Huntingdon and then a couple of sets of surrounding parishes and so on. It's an interesting thing, but then the thing is, I think I've just looked up under the Redcliffe Moor, they'd be called provincial counties, provincial councils, and they'd be doing the big strategic stuff. But you could also do the stuff. I don't know. They could. I think having that layer would be good. I know we're having the mayors. I'm still not convinced on mayors. The thing of having a combined authority and mayor over two unitaries just seems a bit weird.
It is, because they're undersized, and because that was another mucked up reorganisation, wasn't it? It was supposed to include parts of Suffolk and I think Norfolk as well, but they bottled it at the last minute. The original geography for the mayor was Norfolk, Suffolk, and Cambridgeshire. And I think Norfolk went very early. This might be the other way around, and backed out very early, and then later on Suffolk did. So we ended up with just a Cambridgeshire mayor. But you can actually find like one of the proposals signed by everybody, which has got Suffolk and Norfolk on it. Signed by the leader of the county council. It might have been Steve Count back then. I don't know. Maybe it was you, Martin. But then that didn't happen, and there's further iterations. They disappeared. Yeah, they got cold feet, and basically what happened is the combined authority is the footprint of the old county council before Peterborough went by itself in the 1980s.
And you do wonder. I do wonder, would it not just make sense just to bring Peterborough back into Cambridgeshire?
Yeah. The trouble is the resentment from Peterborough at that time when in the period before Peterborough split off was pretty strong. The message they got very strongly. You've all heard this before, but the message they got, you were getting very strongly from Peterborough, was that that Cambridgeshire. That they were the forgotten part of Cambridgeshire, And you hear that argument from every council in Cambridgeshire, to be fair, but when you get it from a city council as well, and the feeling was really, really strong, and that's why it was at the same time that Huntingdonshire tried to get a unitary and got turned down. So I think it was during John Major's prime minister premiership. Peterborough managed to get its own unitary.
Yeah. Alex, so we talked about how people were, incensed in Peterborough during the last lot of, mini local government organisation. What is the feeling you're getting on the door? Are people engaged with this and interested with this, or just they don't care at the moment?
I mean, first of all, I would say that like most people are not aware of like the kind of public engagement going on yet. I mean, some people were, to be fair, but a lot of them were like, what is this? Yes, I heard about local government reform, but I wasn't sure there's like a survey, or I'm not sure if there's any way to express my view. What comes out quite a lot, which I think that's kind of my view as well, is like at least a few people asked me today, and I did like 2 sessions of canvassing, and I did ask like quite a few people about what they thought about it, was around why, why should I bother to give in any views, because my views won't matter. At the end of the day, it's not my decision, and local people would not be listened to in this. And I have to say, like, it's not a formal consultation, so I can't go there and pretend like, yes, whatever you say in the consultation will be shaping the proposals, because it's not like a referendum on the options. So I think that kind of comes across. In general, I would say most people I've spoken to, and obviously it's not a representative sample today, have had quite strong comments around like St. Ives being much more connected to Cambridge, although I did find a couple of people who are like also had quite mixed opinions, seeing the sense of like having Huntingdonshire with Peterborough. So, but I would say the vast majority of people are more towards like, yes, I either work in Cambridge, or, my children like went to college there, or like other kind of like, activities. So yes, it's a bit of a mixed view, but I would say in general that what I observed just today is like a lack of, I guess, trust that like any kind of local engagement would actually matter in what will. And I think people just ask, what's the point? Why should I bother filling in a survey? Which is, quite sad if we actually want to try to engage the residents in this discussion.
It's a real problem with any form of consultation. I say this to somebody that does consultation for a living. People are so cynical, and our political system is so disliked by across the country. I'm not talking just about Cambridgeshire, by the way, across the country. So disliked, one of the most unpopular democracies in the Western world amongst its own population. That it's really, really difficult to do a positive consultation about anything. So I agree. Can I just throw something in there? I think Huntingdonshire, the last consultation they did on the local plan, did a great job of it. They did stuff like putting stuff on the side of bin lorries and all that sort of stuff. Surely this is serious enough to do the same sort of consultation.
So I've posted the link to the consultation, which can appear on some of the platforms, but it's on the Cambridgeshire County Council website. But you could also find it on any of the district or city councils, and it says "Have your say on local government reorganisation, devolution," and so we talk about people not being inspired by this. I was asked to comment on early draft of this, and I said like it's a bit disingenuous. I would advise people to do it, because it talks about how you interact with councils. So we talked about adult social care earlier, and you get just clicking all the boxes and think of all the ways that your council serves you is quite interesting, but it doesn't in any way at all discuss the 3 options which are on the table. And when it was being drafted, people saying to me, "Oh, it's going to be done alongside the Gunning principles," and I'm like, well, the Gunning principles say that you have to be able to influence the outcome, and this isn't even addressing the outcome. And I don't actually see what the harm would be of asking people that these are the options on the table, which one would you prefer? But they're not in there at all. And I find that.
Here's a question for you. I mean, this is a serious question, and it's something that people need to think about. If they're being consulted and aren't able to influence the outcome as a result of that, what happens if this is JR'd, the final decision?
I just don't know. I don't know.
It's something the council should think about a little bit. Because if they're not consulting on the 3 options, I think that's an error. Is the truth.
but that's it's a consultative one, because the decision isn't made by the final decision is made by the minister. Now, realistically, the minister will decide based on what the local authorities recommend, but they can make any decision they want.
Well, yes and no. There's no point doing engagement unless you do an engagement that is able to influence the outcome.
It's a data point, isn't it? It's going to be a data point in making that decision, is that people in this part of the district want to go this way. One of the arguments is being made about Huntingdonshire is Huntingdonshire looks to Peterborough, because of travel to work patterns, which I think is wrong, and we discussed that last week. I think the data doesn't show that, but it's an argument which is consistently made, and I saw made by the campaign for Cambridgeshire unitaries making the same point, is that Huntingdonshire looks to Peterborough. I just don't think the most Huntingdonshire does look to Peterborough, but whatever. It will be interesting to give people the opportunity to say where they want to be. I mean, are people qualified enough to have those opinions? Are they invested enough in the details of it? Lots of people want to have a Cambridgeshire postcode because it's a good brand, and you could also argue that people don't really know enough about this, and and think enough about it. But
I'll tell you a story about that. A previous leader of Huntingdonshire used to tell me that was a problem for Huntingdonshire, because a lot of Huntingdonshire's got a Peterborough postcode, and they were trying to build an economy that has similar to Cambridge. And I spoke to just let me just drop a name here, Nick Clegg, when he was Deputy Prime Minister, when I went to talk about the City deal down in Westminster and our approach to the City deal. And I said to him that there is no reason why you could not have somebody, if they wanted, provided they were in a sensible boundary, buy a Cambridge postcode instead of a Peterborough one. The post office system would be flexible enough to do it. And I suggested that they did that. Nick Clegg didn't have a clue.
So I think almost all of Huntingdonshire, certainly St Neots, has a Peterborough postcode. I think there's some places out in the east, like Worsley, and that have a Sandy postcode, but most of us have a Peterborough postcode. But also we've got a Cambridgeshire address. I don't think people don't really assign much value to postcodes in terms of your identity. I don't think these days. So, but it's an important point.
By the way,
it's funny, Martin. So just what you say, the King was saying to me the other day just how much he hates name dropping.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. I'll see who else I can name drop later on if you want.
Yeah.
So I do think I do implore, especially the kind of politically engaged people listening to this, to fill it in. Yeah, I think it's useful. I don't genuinely think it's going to affect the outcome, and so it makes it a bit difficult to which is the point Alex has been making, and the truth is very few of us have, even me being on the cabinet or one of the district councils, have a limited ability to influence a decision which is going to be taken at leadership level. Probably it might be voted on by councils, we don't know yet, but ultimately will be taken by Whitehall.
But the point I would make is that if you consult on it, okay, and it's not to say that the consultation is a referendum, because it can't be that. You need politicians to make the final decision. But what it can do is you sit there and you look at what people have said, what they voted, what preferences have been expressed, what are the strong preferences, and where they disagree with yours. You then look at it and think, actually, we need to start giving weight to these arguments, and we need to go a bit deeper, and maybe we have made a mistake. And it's not to say tainted by it, but it is to say that we have gone back in because those arguments were so strong and reevaluated. And it may be that reevaluation comes up with change.
Can I just say one thing, because I think we're going to move on to the GCP in just a minute. Yeah, but one of the things the GCP did right, I think, on the whole STZ congestion charge thing, is actually, if you looked at that engagement, which was really, really well subscribed to, lots of people from both sides did it, but they did a really good job of plotting all that on maps. And you could see, I could generally go to the people in my county council division and say, actually, people in my division are in favour of this. Yeah, which allowed me, if it had ever come to vote for it, I could have generally said, like, people who bothered to respond to this consultation said to me, we think this is a good idea, which would have informed my vote. Yeah. And I think you could definitely do that with this by having, maps of existing county council divisions, and saying, this is where the people in St Neots East and Gransden see themselves going. Yeah. And that it would be another data point. Whether it's influential or not, I don't know. But I think as much data as possible helps make good decisions, doesn't it?
If you actually asked about the options, yes. If you had like a choice between the three options on the table, it could be like, this area prefers option C and this area prefers option A.
And you could plot a very nice coherent map, I think, from that.
You can't, but you have to let politicians make the decision, but that decision is better informed with more data. That's the point for me.
This is, I think, part of the reason. I mean, and I know, and I've been critical, particularly on the 20-hour consultation and others. I think this is something that we need to do better at getting across to people about what a consultation is for, and that is not a referendum, and that some of the reasons why not. But yeah.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. That's what I do for a living, David, and I spend half my time trying to explain that to people. I was talking to people the other day about the vote on assisted dying. I don't want to go into that whole debate, but about the point that people were saying, members of Parliament, weren't interested in the views of their constituents. It was just a vote of conscience. And I was making the point, yes, a vote of conscience, but if you watch that debate on Friday, a number of MPs cited examples that came from their constituents that influenced the way they vote and influenced their conscience. And that was,
Yeah. Right, so that's LGR. Shall we move on a little bit, though still kind of LGR based, with everybody's favourite topic, which is the Greater Cambridge Partnership, which is another layer of local government, which some people don't understand, but basically was a bunch of money. Do you want to describe it, Mike? Because you're probably involved in the genesis of it.
The city deal was put together basically with a consortium of people from Cambridgeshire County Council, South Cambridgeshire District Council, Peterborough City Council. Cambridge City Council, South Cambridgeshire, Cambridgeshire County Council, the university, and I can't remember who the other body was, but another body was involved. And we put together a deal which I spent a huge amount of time talking to ministers about to get going. And the funding was always designed to deal with the economy of Cambridge, and in particular, the major focus was about the fact that the economy of Cambridge, Greater Cambridge, was going to start to struggle unless somebody got to grips with the transport issues around the area. And I remember talking to ministers about it, about the fact that there's a real lack of orbital capacity around Cambridge City. And therefore, in order to get from one side of Cambridge to another, you have to go through it, and that's part of the problem with the traffic jams and everything else in Cambridge City. Yeah. That was a big part of it, and eventually that funding was agreed, and it was a funding package of, I can't remember, I think it was $1 billion over 15 years, and the government have just announced that they are going ahead with the third phase of funding, which is 400 million.
Is that the final funding?
Is
it's the one, yeah. Which I'm really pleased about, actually, because the fuss some people have made about the city deal, about the GCP, certainly some people in particular, I think potentially put that funding under threat. And I have to say, take my hat off to the GCP for what they've done for achieving that third round of funding, because they have been under some horrendous pressure. And what I hope happens now is people forget all the past arguments. People forget the fact that, yes, the structure's not perfect, and all that stuff. Let's get on, get that 400 million, and let's start getting delivery done with it. And there is a delivery package put forward for it, which would have been part of the getting the third round. let's get on and get it delivered. And there's something else I want to say, pretty much the same message. Politicians sit around a table, be sensible, be political, but not overtly political. So you're just trying to stop the thing functioning, and let's get it delivering.
So the issue with the GCP is that it's changed hands several times because of the political landscape shifting in Cambridgeshire. Yeah, originally it was a concept. It was during the coalition government. Yeah, and it was a joint Lib Dem Conservatives were strong in, I guess, in the county council, in some of the other councils as well. And they pushed that through with Nick Clegg being in government as well, and David Cameron, and they pushed that through. And what happened subsequently is the politics of the area changed, and so during the last administration, Labour were in charge of the GCP because of their position on the city council, I think. And now I think during this, because the Lib Dems have done well, now it's back in Lib Dems' hands again, isn't it, Alex? As well, Lib Dems running the GCP or chair of GCP.
The chair, yeah.
Yeah, and so because of that, you get sensible ideas which were proposed by the Conservatives, when they were running it, who are now opposed to those ideas, like the SDZ being one of them, because they're not in control anymore, and that kind of shows you just how fickle politics can be.
But there were a number of things. I remember sitting and looking in the first few years of the City Deal and looking at it, and looking at how the City Deal board are caved under pressure that was created basically by a political party whipping up a storm. And it made it very, very difficult for the GCP to function. In the early days, by the way, it was Conservative County Council, albeit it was on a hung council with the Conservatives had a majority. But I think under both me and Steve Count, the votes on City Deal funding and the City Deal structure actually went through unanimously through the council. But originally Ray Manning was the leader of, as Conservative, was leader of South Cambridgeshire. South Cambridgeshire used to be Conservative. And it was Tim, forgotten his name, who was Lib Dem leader of was a leader of the City Council. I'll remember his name now. It's a shame that I can't remember. It's because he was a nice chap. But we worked together really strongly on it as well to make it happen, and that's something that is worth mentioning. And just to do that again, by the way, at the end of the City Deal process, when we signed the MOU for the City Deal, the Chancellor of the Exchequer wrote an article in the Cambridge News in which he described me as excellent. By the way,
it's funny because I was talking to the Pope the other day, and he was saying how much he hates people who name. Sorry, Martin, but I
just dropped that in just to take the mick, mate.
So you'd hope that people of all political persuasions would celebrate the investment of £400 million into Greater Cambridgeshire, which is South Cambs and Cambridge City. Yeah, it's got to be a good thing for the area. It has to be, but people won't. Yeah, there is a very toxic view of the GCP in certain parts of Greater Cambridgeshire.
We also talk about how the economy of the UK is struggling and everything else. And yet, we're giving this funding in to actually, accelerate the economy of Cambridgeshire and Greater Cambridge, which is one of the most powerful economies in the country. And the politicians in and around Cambridgeshire can't get it together to get it spent and to have sensible debate about how it's spent.
What is the lifetime now of the GCP? Because actually, with local government reorganisation coming in, how long? 5 more years. So what's interesting? We've got 3 options on the table. Yeah, the option I think is the one that's most likely is Greater Cambridgeshire being South Cambs and Cambridge City being one unitary, and everybody else being another unitary. I think that's the one which most of the councils, as I understand it, are favouring, and the one that's the most likely outcome. Albeit that I know Martin's shaking his head. I'd agree with Martin on that. Yeah, I think that unitary is too small, but it could well be that the GCP footprint will be run by a unitary council, which would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure. It would be. The issue for me is the GCP, although it sits in isolation as a physical body, in terms of what it's there to achieve, it doesn't sit in isolation. You've got East West Rail, you've got guided busway, you've got the A14 upgrade, and all those things, which are bringing, transport focus into and around Cambridge. So the GCP deals with the immediate vicinity, but there's lots of other things that are relevant to the greater Cambridge economy that matter as well.
So we had to vote several times on some of the busway proposals as county councillors, because we were the transport authority and there were GCP proposals, but we had to be signed off by transport, those were some of the most difficult and controversial votes that we were involved with, especially since I voted with the opposition on it, and I went with my conscience on some of them, I think a couple of times, and also I wrote an article in the Cambridge Independent saying like the GCP is a level of government with too many, and I think Paul Bristow has talked about some. I think so. It's definitely the first mayor. James Palmer wanted to get rid of the GCP and couldn't, and wanted to pull it into his footprint. I think Paul Bristow has said similar things, although don't quote me because maybe he hasn't. But the existence of the mayor, the kind of combined authority which came after the GCP, kind of is another layer of complexity as well, isn't it? Because he has, or the mayor has, transport responsibilities, but and so does the county council. I think there's 5 different bodies in Cambridge who are responsible for transportation, which is much.
I agree, but there comes a point where you've got, especially when the GCP's got a life of just 5 years, where you've just got to sit there and you've got to say, actually, this is complicated, but it's 5 years of complicated, not a lifetime, and therefore we'll just put up with it and get on with it and make it work, and that's it.
Yeah. Anybody?
It's probably easier just to deliver what you have on the program at the moment than to try to scrap it or to integrate in something else.
Yeah, just
get no point really.
All right. So moving away, just so we were only going to do a short bit about local government reorganisation, but it seems that everything is about that today. I don't know. One of you just mentioned in the chat. Yeah, we should probably talk about what happened in Peterborough this week. So Peterborough is a very complicated council politically, isn't it? Because it used to be under Conservative control, and then it moved under to independent or Peterborough First control for a while, and then they lost the support, and then Labour took over. Was it last year sometime with a minority administration, supported by other people, but that was under threat this week, wasn't it? And there was a vote of confidence, I think, in the leadership of Dennis Jones, is leader.
Yes, I watched it live, the meeting.
Did you?
Yes,
it's always interesting. Watching Peterborough meetings is just interesting because it's very, very different than Cambridge.
Yes, it is.
Every single way. And
how so?
Great.
Oh well, certainly though, because they've got like Union Jacks on the walls and pictures of the King and Queen, which we have at Huntingdon as well. But it seems very, very kind of that. If you go to Cambridge County Council, there's very little of that at all, and it seems quite kind of municipal rather than.
I am sometimes critical of the politics in Cambridgeshire, but in Peterborough, it's another level of not nice. It's reality.
Yeah, having chaired the county council, and put my foot down. Like there's only 2 reasons you can put. You can object to anything. Yeah, and but in Peterborough there seems to be loads of them. People have got cards a hand up saying points of personal explanation, and like the debates are really, really crazy and quite. We call them toxic. They're very, very passionate. Yeah, debates, which are we see passionate debates at all levels of local politics, but some of those crossed the line. So I didn't see this meeting. I did see previous meetings where the previous or the Conservatives lost control of the administration. That was it was very eye-opening for me. But what? Go on.
I watched that meeting, or it may have been the one after that I watched, and it was horrendous. Is the reality.
Yeah. So you watched the meeting, Alex. What was the outcome of the vote of confidence or no confidence?
So what was really interesting to me was some of the speeches, especially the speech from the Conservative group leader, who pretty much said like this is really a pointless and politically motivated exercise, which it was. But yeah, it was like for the motion was 26 against 32, so close, but not as close as it could have been, and one abstention. So. Yes, it does. I mean, that's really interesting because the argument was like, well, when it's time for new leadership, like, the Peterborough First, Greens and some of the others, well, the Lib Dems can run it all together. There were like lots of different speeches. There was like a lot, some of the speeches were actually like very good points around some of the cabinet members saying we've already made some progress on this work. We have local government reform, like anyway, it's not the right time to, have this discussion in the first place, whereas others were obviously wanted the change in leadership and were making the point that there's no way to change the leadership apart from having this vote of no confidence in the leader. So yeah, it was quite an insightful debate, I think, and yeah, the leader of the Conservatives did vote against the proposal, which is interesting.
Voted against.
So what, David? Repeat that. Missed that.
So sorry, I missed that. The leader of the Conservatives voted against the motion of no confidence.
Yeah. So yeah, and he actually gave quite a good speech.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say the same argument about Peterborough as I would with the GCP. They spend far too long mulling over all this stuff about who's leading and everything else. And the reality is the biggest threat to a council is dearth in leadership. And the time has come now for them to just get their noses to the grindstone and get on with things. There are huge questions, because whatever happens with this local government review, there are huge changes coming. Even if it's just Greater Cambridge and you expand, take Whittlesea and Yaxley and whatever into it, you've still got big issues to deal with. For example, council tax equalisation. What are you going to do about free parking in Fenland? All those things are relevant, and they need somebody and they need a council that's getting its nose to the grindstone and getting on with this stuff and thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it's good that they haven't changed leadership, because of course the whole of the LGR decisions and discussions are being made at leader level, and you hope that you wouldn't want that being changed at a relatively late stage in proceedings, although it might be a good thing to mix things up a bit. But yeah, we've got this far, and it would have been, I think, interesting to have that changed. David, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I mean, also I meant more at the end of the show. So it wasn't specifically on this, but I can do it.
We're 52 minutes in on a Sunday night, and I've
okay. So I had some. Well, I've got some motions through, seeing as we're talking about debate and so on. Huntingdon Town Council during on Thursday, and a couple of them were to basically just to write to the district council or the county council or the combined authority or both, saying, this is a thing we want. I mean, one was about cycling, one was about moving where the market is in Huntingdon. As you've all been on principal authorities, do you think that's worth doing? Do you think that actually achieves anything?
Probably more than the letter to minister does. With my motions on county council. Joking. Some of the response, I have to say, were actually quite useful. So the one I've done on flood mitigation, actually, we got quite an interesting response back. So it's not always pointless.
So what happens? Somebody has to respond to that letter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Some portfolio holder's going to have to respond to your letter, and you can publish the response to your letter. What I think the county council is quite good at is public contributions to motions and people speaking at the start of meetings, and we often have questions, don't we, from members of the public, and so I think those things will be framed much better as a question being asked at a council meeting, where people would have to respond verbally rather than written letter, because written responses are never that good, I don't think, and you'd have a chance to ask a follow-up question as well, and so it's a bit better. That happens often at county council.
Yeah.
It happens very rarely at district council. I can think of only a couple of occasions where we've had people to speak at the start of our meetings, which I think is a pity, because they are an opportunity to put some pressure or get answers from an administration in real time, whereas getting the letters I've had responses to when I've done this at various levels have always been kind of civil servant jargon speak, and they're difficult. It's that if you can write a response, I mean, to be fair, if you did ask a question anyway, you have to declare the question in advance, and the response you get will probably be read out for you. At county council, there are quite a lot of read out responses, but I think it's better if it happens in public.
I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm actually doing that at both Cambridgeshire next month at the council meetings, both Cambridgeshire and Huntingdonshire. I've got, I'm asking questions as a sort of private individual rather than as a councillor, town councillor.
I support that, but it's not on my portfolio, is it? Because
Don't know. Do you do gambling?
yes. Oh, great.
Oh no, you'll be on the persistent complainers list, David, as a local resident.
Do I do gambling? Yes. Is it in my portfolio? Also, yes.
Could you just put something else in there, David, that I think is quite important? Is by asking the question at council, and I think Stevens makes a good point. The other thing it does is stick that view in the back of people's minds. So when it comes to things like scrutiny committees, and when you, or as a portfolio holder or a committee chair, when you're talking issues through, it's one of those things that it sometimes comes out of the back of somebody's mind because you spoke about it at council or whatever, and they know it's an issue. So I think there is relevance to that.
I do.
Now, I remember a couple of times at full council where 6 months down the road with at county council, 6 months down the road, we're talking about an issue, and I'm talking about it with the head of service. I'm saying, well, can you remember going back, blah blah blah, so and so said this, and there was some merit in what he said. Can't we weave that into this paper?
Yeah, I mean that's actually really interesting, and that would be that sort of actually makes me feel quite, that it's worth doing. I mean, I'll say on the for both the district council and the county council, it's the first time I've asked to ask a question. I've spoken, but not asked a question. I've actually been quite impressed by the sort of how easy they make the process, and they're sort of it's like on the way through, they're sort of actually trying to be sort of helpful and so on. I was actually, I have to say, quite impressed.
To be fair, they've been doing it a few years.
Yeah, we've got those great dem services at both county council and especially district council as well. Shout out to them.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, but it's I just, I don't know. I just the whole thing is like if I was just a regular citizen. Well, I am just a regular citizen. I'm no one special. I'm like, actually, yeah. It's the feeling was like, actually, yes, these people are interested in what I have to say. Want to give me the opportunity to ask the question, that sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, this is good.
I genuinely wish more people would do it. It's especially at district council. At county council it happens quite a lot because county council tends to deal with more contentious things, I think, and it's part of that kind of Cambridge ecosystem. There's lots of activists involved, whereas Huntingdonshire not so much. We do get questions from the opposition as cabinet members, which I always really enjoy because it keeps you on your toes. Like Martin said, I'm always they don't usually tell us what they're going to ask us, and so you end up having to, quite often, if you don't really understand, you just to say, I'm sorry, I will write to you later if you haven't got any notice, because you don't sometimes get a good answer. But quite often I agree with them, and I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I hadn't considered that, and we'll try and do better next time. It's kind of my default response.
Yeah, what I would, the thing about you do get politically driven questions at council, and it used to frustrate me when you'd have somebody come and talk about an issue, and you could see that it had been written by Lib Dem deliberately just to try. Well, I'm sorry, that's who were doing it. Just to create a bit of publicity half the time. It wasn't about wanting a certain answer or wanting to influence the council. It was about the Lib Dems trying to write a press release, and that used to really, really annoy me.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I feel like also like you can observe as well, like before the elections, I think we had a couple of public questions in county, like kind of like March time, which are obviously from county council candidates who want to be on the county council, and like framed about it like one local issue. I think it's one in your area actually, Stephen. There was like one in South Camps that I could like identify them before I even knew about them. Like, yes, you're like just asking this question as a candidate, but I think some candidates are actually encouraged to do this kind of questions when they're like doing their campaigning as well. So it depends. But it's quite frustrating when you know it's like deliberately there to make it into the latest local update, a straight letter.
Yeah, well, you could see it. You know that Lib Dem focus going through a door. You could see straight away. You know exactly what's going in the next one. Is so and so asked this question of the council, and that's what 90%, 95% of it was about. And yeah, that used to really annoy me. Yeah.
Well, you have to be the local champion, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got the latest edition of the Lib Dem Focus newsletter, and all I saw was the massive bar graph on the front page. I didn't open the rest of it, so I might read it later. I tend to keep all these things.
You see, that's why the bar graphs are effective. That's exactly why the bar chart works.
No, wow.
I haven't read anything else apart from that.
Well, yeah, I didn't read it in a positive way, but but yes, I noticed it. Yeah, and obviously it does work because they've done very well around here. All right, anything else, or should we call it a day with an hour on a Sunday night? Anybody else want to say anything, or shall we let people get back to their Sunday evening blues?
Just want to say something that's really exciting from a Whittlesey perspective, which is that Kingsdyke Bridge is going to have the final works done on it to get it fixed again. It's now officially had traffic controls on it more than it has been open since it was opened, and it is now we've got a final date for it. It's going to take 22 weeks to fix. I'm still a bit cynical about whether it'll sort it out.
If Ralph Butcher was still around, it would have got done sooner, I'm sure, because that was Ralph's
it wasn't
career-long project.
I would tell you, it was me and Ralph.
You and Ralph. Okay.
Me and Ralph, we used to double team it. He used to push at it at group meetings and everything else, but because I was on cabinet, it was a bit more difficult for me. But when we used to have the informal cabinet meetings, I used to push at it all the time. I remember one cabinet meeting where I think another Cambridge or South Cambs project was being talked about for highways, and I banged my fist on the desk and said, when does Kingsdyke Crossing come off the all too difficult pile? And it was about 2 or 3 months after that the council made the announcement that they were going to fund Kingsdyke Crossing.
So it's funny, as I was saying just the other week to the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, how much I like banging on.
Well, if we're gonna drop names, yeah, I've got some skin in the Ralph Butcher causeway, because I was the person as chair of the county council who cut the ribbon. Yeah, and which was a really proud moment for me, because it's a proper project as well. And looking over the edge of the star pit, you didn't know what a star pit is, yeah, but it's a big bloody endless hole, yeah. Was really interesting, but it was it made obviously made some massive difference to the local area. The other thing that happened is I cut the ribbon, and then me and Nick Johnson were on the ceremonial first drive across the bridge, yeah, in a highways truck. Somebody took a photo of me, didn't have my seatbelt on, and people submitted complaints about me again for like not enforcing highway standards. I'm like, it wasn't technically open at the time, but yeah, should have done better.
So I was at the opening. I remember I didn't actually cut the ribbon, but I was invited to the opening of the the bridge over the railway station at St Neots.
Oh yeah.
I was at that. Yeah, I was at that.
You and I have walked over that before in a state of severe drunkenness, I think, when I walked you back to the station.
I believe, yes.
Don't go any further before the code of conduct is being again, Stephen. An exciting update from me, Refugee Week was this week, and the county council has the Refugee Week flag. So the flags are still allowed on the county council building. So that's very good.
Excellent.
No, I'm glad about that. Well, there'll be other councils that won't do it now, and I think it's a shame. Our policy used to be that we did whatever we applied the same policy that Number 10 applied, and that used to be the way we worked. And I think that was deviated from. I can't remember why, and it's changed, and it's probably a good thing that we use a bit of local view on it on what we do.
So again, when I was chair of county council, every week, I used to have to put my suit on, dash up the road to Alconbury Weald and raise a flag, sometimes 2 or 3 flags at once, because we're doing for the press releases as well. But in general, when it was at Old Shire Hall, it was a bit more community based because more people used to come to them. But actually, things like the White Ribbon event and armed services and blue lights were all genuinely joyful occasion. The Ukrainian flag, which was perhaps controversial, had Ukrainian people in absolute tears that we were showing support for their cause.
No, absolutely.
And it costs literally nothing. It costs what, 30 quid for a flag, and whichever muggish chair the county council has to keep his dry cleaning bill because you have to go up and down.
On the anniversary of the start of the current phase of the Ukrainian war, we've lit up Huntingdon Town Council in blue and yellow. We've got, the lights already there; they're already on. We've got the gels, so the cost is some of the caretakers' time to do it.
It's one of the things,
but it made a huge difference to the Ukrainian people here. I think really appreciated that we did that.
It's that conflict is the most important conflict going on in the world today. I know Iran and everything else is in the news and everything else. That is, I could talk about this forever. I probably won't but it's the most important thing that's happening to us. But I just want to say, Alex, the Facebook updates and everything else you did over Refugee Week. I think I saw 3 or 4 of them or something along those lines. You did a bloody great job. Excuse my language, but yeah.
Well, I was today, they had this community fair with the different organizations in Cambridge. So today I did, canvassing in St. Ives with David in the morning, then the civic parade. Then I went to, actually took the bus to Cambridge and back within an hour and a half and did the event, and then did picnic in the park and then canvassing again. So if anyone wants a diary manager, I'm your person.
Well done for sneaking buses into the podcast right at the end. Then, so to keep the title.
I did too. Yeah, so I went to the bus to be half an hour in the event and don't go back, so it fits within the 2-hour time slot. So it is possible to do St. Ives to Cambridge and back and do an event within 2 hours, and the buses were on time, which is not always the case, but actually it worked very well today. So it's much easier, definitely, than driving into Cambridge, central Cambridge.
Try get a bus to Peterborough for St. Ives. We'll talk about that next time then. All right.
Shall we do a live stream? Yeah. We should try the different routes.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to go eat my dinner now. See you later.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.